Welcome to the Traveling Flaneur podcast, where I'll talk about the economy, politics, history, and culture of the places I've visited. I'll also give you travel tips, recommend places to visit, things to do, and the best food. The life of a flaneur is that of an observer, a person who wanders aimlessly with eyes always open to any opportunity. It is a person who is in no hurry and prefers the journey over the destination. I believe that in this hurried world we live in, we need more flaneurs, and I hope you enjoy the perspective from a traveling flaneur and maybe become one in your next trip. Hi, and welcome to Niagara. After 3 episodes dedicated to Toronto, today I'm going to take you to Niagara Falls, a tour that's going to be near Toronto that I think you should include in your visit no matter how many days you stay in Toronto. Niagara Falls is one of the most famous tourist destinations in the entire world, and they receive over 30 million tourists every year, and rightly so because it is truly a breathtaking natural spectacle. These big falls are located on the border between the US and Canada, and they are separating Ontario from New York. They are located in the Niagara River, which is going to connect Lake Erie with Lake Ontario. So if I start going into the more technical details, Niagara Falls is going to be the collective name for 3 waterfalls. First, the Horseshoe Falls, second, the Bridal Veil Falls, and third, the American Falls. So the first one, the Horseshoe Falls, they're going to be the largest and the most impressive ones, and they're going to be located on the Canadian side. These are going to have a height of approximately 57 meters and a curved width of about 617 meters. And then the other big ones are going to be the American Falls, which by the name you can guess are going to be on the American side. And these falls are going to have a similar height of like 58 meters, but their extension is going to be almost half of the Canadian ones. It's going to be around 320 meters in width. So even though this sounds ginormous, Niagara Falls are not the widest nor the highest in the world. However, for being like a funnel for 3 different waterfalls, they have won the world record for the largest volume of water that's falling. And we are talking about 110,000 cubic meters per minute, which is practically 3,000 tons of water per second or 600,000 gallons per second, which is an extraordinary amount wherever you look from. And this force is going to be superior because the water is coming from 4 of the 5 Great Lakes, which are Erie, Huron, Michigan, and Superior. Some fun facts about these falls are that first, the depth of the water below the falls is going to be proportional to the fall of the water. So that is, at this point, the water is going to have a depth of around 54 meters, which is kind of the same that you're seeing from the entire fall. So this is going to be very, very deep. Then the second fun fact is going to be that although this fall looks gigantic, most of the fish and the animals that are traveling through this falls survive. And it is surprising that 90% of them make it alive and, well, at the bottom of the falls. And then my last fun fact is going to be about the name, because the term Niagara comes from the terminology that was used by the indigenous community of the region, which were the Iroquois Indians. This population lived near Lake Erie, and they believed that the falls, because of their huge size, were the home of Hinu, which was the god of the thunder. And therefore, they called this place Niagara, which means thunder of the water. Now, I'm going to start giving you all of the travel tips that you need for visiting this very interesting place. And the first thing to consider is around the logistics. So how will you get to the falls? Although they are close to Toronto, it will take you about an hour and a half from the city to the falls. And so you'll have several options to make it here. The first and the easiest one is going to be by car, of course, because you can rent a car and then drive to the falls. As a tip, it's usually cheaper to rent a car for a full day. For example, if I rented from 8 a.m. one day till 8 a.m. to the next day, instead of renting it, for example, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. that same day. So it's weird, I don't know how it works, but I would recommend if you can that you rent it 24 hours a day, so you also have enough time to explore the entire area. The only bad thing is going to be around the parking, Because when you get to Niagara, you're going to see some parking lots that are going to be relatively cheap, but the ones that are in front of the falls are going to cost you about $25 per hour. And I was almost crying paying for that parking lot because, of course, you're going to need to stay there for more than 1 hour. So it was probably the most expensive parking I have ever paid, and this is something that you should be budgeting into your plans because even though when you're sharing it with other people, it might not be as expensive. Renting a car is obviously going to involve gas costs, parking costs, and the car rental costs. So this is going to be the best option. Of course, it's going to allow you to be more flexible, to get to the place whenever you want, and to stay as long as you want, but it's going to be the most expensive. The next option that you have, which is also convenient and a little bit cheaper, is going to be traveling there by bus. Because this one, it's also going to be very easy. You just take a bus from Union Station and you have two companies that are going to get you straight into the falls, and they are going to be Flixbus and Megabus. And if you buy the tickets with enough time in advance, they shouldn't be so expensive. But if you buy them the same day at the station, they can cost you around $70 or higher per trip. So it is going to be expensive. My advice here, if you want to go by bus, would be that you should buy your tickets beforehand so they are not as expensive. And well, the last option would be the cheapest option, but the least convenient, and it would be going by train. Because from Toronto, there are going to be some trains that are called GO trains. And with those trains, you can get to the falls station. And then after you get over here, you have to take like a taxi or a bus into the falls. So this is going to be the most time-consuming option because the train takes about 2 hours and then it won't even get you to the falls. It will get you to the train station. So you have to also take another thing. But it's also going to be the cheapest. So if you're in a budget, this might be the best option. Especially, you could get the weekend option of the GO trains, and this is going to be a pass that allows you to travel for $10. So it's going to be way, way cheaper. And if you're traveling with a tight budget, this might be your best option, but of course it's going to be the least convenient, and you have to be checking for the hours of train departures and stuff so you aren't trapped in Niagara. But okay, after covering how to get there, the next thing that you should consider is when to visit. Because these falls are going to be open all year round, so that's not an issue, but the opening hours of the attractions are going to change a little bit, closing earlier in the winter and later during the summer. But what I really recommend would be avoiding any special dates, such as New Year's, Christmas, all of that. Or also, if you can, try to avoid the weekends, because as you've noticed, these falls are going to be very touristy and they are always going to be crowded. But especially if you go on one of the special dates or during the weekends, they're going to be kind of horrible. You'll find lots of lines, lots of people. So if you can visit during weekdays, I think this would be the most advisable. And at least you're going to be able to explore the falls without so many crowds. Now, the third tip would be, what can you do over there? And so this is going to be the most important thing. When you arrive, obviously you can walk along the pedestrian street and you're going to be able to see the falls from there. But there are also more activities that you could do while you are in Niagara. What I recommend the most is a boat ride called the Niagara City Cruise. And this is a 20-minute ride that takes you to see the falls literally in front of you. So you will get soaked and the water is going to come with so much force from the falls that it will lift a lot of water. So wherever you are in the boat, you will get wet, but this is very exciting. It's beautiful. I have done it 3 times already, and I am a fan of this trip because it's very, very nice and beautiful, and I think it's the coolest thing that you can do in the falls. You can buy the tickets online, and this saves you a little bit of time in the line to get it. But the thing is, the tickets come with an assigned time to take the tour. So, for example, they're going to say you can board the trip from 2 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So all of the times that I have gone there, I have bought the tickets online, but when I'm already there. So I know exactly what time I'm going to be riding in the boat. Because if you're planning with a lot of time in advance, maybe you're planning for one time and you won't make it there. So what I would recommend is buy it online, but buy it online once you're there already. The ticket is going to cost around $33, and I'm going to drop the link in the comments in case you need to buy the tickets over here. Then the second thing that I would recommend is an attraction called Niagara Behind the Falls. And here you can enter a viewpoint that will give you the best views for photos. And usually you can see the rainbow in the falls in this point, if it's sunny of course, but it's going to give you very, very nice photos. And you can also walk through a tunnel that's going to give you a view behind the falls, as the name says it. So you can see them fall, you can hear the power of the water, and it's also going to be a nice and cool experience, and I would recommend it. It costs around $24. And there are going to be other things that you can do for free if that's what you want. There are some parks where you can sit and enjoy the falls and maybe make a picnic over there. So one of them, the closest one to the falls, it's going to be Queen Victoria Park. Or if you want to go to a further one, you can also go to Dufferin Park. These two are going to be two cheap options that are very nice for watching the falls. And then another free plan that you could do would be visiting Clifton Street, which is a very particular street. It looks as if it was like a fake street. You'll see a lot of decorated stores, restaurants, and more. It looks a little bit like Las Vegas Tribe. And I think it's fun to walk around here if you have more time to spare after you already visited the falls. When I was there, I also saw some other attractions like a zip line and an air car, but if I'm honest, I didn't take them because I had read that they weren't worth it and that they were very expensive for what you got. So I didn't do them, but I can't speak from experience because all of these things I decided based on things that I read from others. So if you have visited them, let me know in the comments what you thought, or if you think that they are worth it for me or other travelers to visit. But if you haven't, well, I wouldn't advise on recommending it, but just because I didn't go. If you visited by bus or by train, basically this is as far as you could go. But if you have a car, you could do two more things to explore the nearby area. One thing would be that if you have a visa for visiting the United States, you could cross the border by the bridge, and then you could enter the state of New York. Over here, you're going to also find things to do in the falls that are on the American side, and also you could visit some of the outlets that are in Buffalo, and they're going to be very good, and you can do a lot of shopping over there. Then the second thing that you could do would be not going towards the US, but exploring more of Canada part. And there's a charming little town called Niagara-on-the-lake, which is very close to the falls, just 20 minutes away. And this is going to be the perfect complement to your visit. The city received the official status in 1781 when it was renamed Newark, and at the time it was a British military town. And this was a refuge for British loyalists that were fleeing the United States in the unstable period following the American Revolution. Later, this place changed its name again, this time to Niagara, and it was named the first capital of Upper Canada, which is today Ontario. And over here, we had the first provincial parliament that was convened in the Navy Hall in 1792. Later, during the War of 1812, the capital was moved to York, which was later renamed Toronto, further away from the combat zones because this city played a central role in the War of 1812. It was basically taken by American forces after a 2-day bombardment by cannons from Fort Niagara and the American fleet, and this was followed by a bloody battle that kind of destroyed the city. But after the battle, then the city was rebuilt, and it preserved the original architecture. So the city, as you can see, it's one of the most important historical cities in Ontario, and it's probably also one of the oldest cities in this area. So if you want to visit it, it would be a very nice place to visit by historical reasons, but this is only important probably for nerds like me. So if you need more reasons to visit, there are tons of other reasons to go. First, this town is going to be extremely beautiful. Its buildings and its architecture are very distinctive, it's very quaint, and you can walk around the main street and the historical part and go into the small stores, cafes, or maybe grab a dessert or an ice cream. and rest on the streets like a flaneur after visiting the Niagara Falls. But the most distinctive thing to do in the city is going to be doing a wine tour, because in the surroundings there are going to be many vineyards, and there are several people who like taking a wine tour that takes you to see the vineyards and then taste wine of the region. This area has about 40 wineries, and most of them are going to be award-winning vintages wineries, and they hold international awards and distinctive Niagara flavors. And in particular, there's going to be a very typical wine that you can get here that's called the ice wine. If you're a wine fan, you have probably already heard of this particular wine because it's very unique. Ice wine is going to be made from frozen grapes. Literally. So they are going to be starting to freeze in the winter, and before they break or they get damaged, these grains are going to be harvested, and then the result is that they're going to have a greater richness and concentration of the grape, which is going to make the wine very, very sweet. And so this out of the ordinary concentration and acidity is going to make the wine quite expensive in the rest of the world, because it's very hard to get. And even in Europe, you can find bottles that are going to be costing around 250 euros. But in Canada, it's going to be cheaper because Canada is the largest producer of ice wine in the entire world. And they are producing more ice wine than all of the other countries in the world combined. And another fun fact would be that in Ontario, so in this region, it's 90% of the Canadian ice wine production. So if you want to take a tour of the local wines, the city is going to be the perfect place to do it. And so with that, you would have a pretty busy itinerary for this Niagara area. If you like this episode, please share it with someone else who loves to travel and give me a review, because this helps me tremendously and it motivates me to give you more travel tips. Subscribe to stay tuned for more episodes, and tell me in the comments if there's anything that surprised you or if there's any advice that you found particularly useful. And I hope to see you next week to explore the nearby region that's going to be the French-Canadian part of this country. Enjoy your trip!